Oh man, today's song is truly epic. Clocking in at just under 16 minutes long, the original version of this breathtaking ditty once had a total of 16 verses. And even that might not have been enough to contain the true story its author intended. After all was said and done, the song was edited down to a radio-friendly 4.5 minutes, but it still alludes to more misadventure and drama than the human mind can really grasp. I mean, best friend betrayals, covert love affairs, cocaine abuse, mystical muses, and band breakdowns. This song is rock's great soap opera, I gotta tell you. So lyrically complex, a famous band took their name from the song, the band name. But they misheard the lyric, so their band name is the Misheard lyric. The whole story is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you are at all enthralled by the true stories of the greatest songs that you've ever heard, they're the soundtrack of your life, make sure to subscribe below right now. I know you'll dig this channel. Click the bell so you always know when our videos drop. Also, make sure to check out our Patreon below. You can become a VIP, more content. That helps us keep this a daily channel. Very important for us to grow. So it's time for another edition of Number One in Our Hearts. This is a show that honors songs that were so unbelievably great, they absolutely should have been number one on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. But for whatever reason, be it lack of marketing, radio play, label support, or even just sheer stupidity, the song came up short. Just to give you an idea of what this is all about, previous episodes we've covered More Than a Feeling by Boston, Night Moves by Bob Seger, and Rosanna by Toto.
Working on a night move.
Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the background and meaning of one of my favorite songs of all time, Sara by Fleetwood Mac. By 1976, there was so much discord within the ranks of Fleetwood Mac, it's a wonder the band didn't completely implode. John and Christine McVie were dissolving their marriage, Mick Fleetwood's marriage to Jenny Boyd was failing, and Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, turbulent as ever, had broken up as well. No surprise there. And yet somehow, through it all, this relationship chaos, or maybe because of it, Fleetwood Mac produced one of the greatest albums of all time. We've talked about it before, their masterwork, Rumors. The collective angst of their torturous undertaking made for some absolutely brilliant material, songs that faithfully documented the heartbreak, the anger, and the frustration that they were all feeling. And us as fans, we could not get enough of it. It was like soap opera on vinyl. Since its release on February 4th, 1977, Rumors has gone on to sell 20 million records just in the US and more than 40 million worldwide. Now, to support this phenomenal album, Fleetwood Mac embarked on an ambitious world tour across the US, Canada, Europe, New Zealand, Australia, and Japan. It kept them on the road for the better part of a year. However, in the waning months of 1977, before setting off on the final leg, Stevie Nicks and Mick Fleetwood embarked on another sort of adventure, a covert love affair. The relationship began one night in LA during a 10-day touring reprieve. The last ones left at a party high on cocaine. One thing led to another until, I'm sure you can guess what happened next. It was, according to Stevie, the biggest surprise. But for Mick, who had adored Stevie from the moment they met, it was exciting, it was romantic, it was the perfect fantasy. That night would be the first of many behind closed doors encounters. And considering the already ridiculous levels of relationship tension in this particular band, this new development had disaster written all over it. In the beginning, no one in the band knew what was going on, and only a select few friends were sworn to secrecy. At the time, Mick was still married to Jenny Boyd, and Stevie was seeing record exec Paul Fishkin. The new couple would escape prying eyes by taking long drives through the Hollywood Hills in Fleetwood's black Porsche. Back on tour, the stolen moments continued. After a sold-out concert in Wellington, the two took a long night to drive through the New Zealand countryside. When they were in Australia, Mick stood backstage holding hands with his wife, who had flown in to see him. But when it was time to start the show, Mick stepped around a curtain, embraced Stevie, and the two exchanged a very passionate kiss. When Fleetwood Mac returned home, Mick felt like his relationship with Stevie had become something very real. By then, Christine McVie had found out, but Lindsay was still in the dark. Stevie, fearing that her ex would quit the band if he found out any other way, she convinced Mick to break the news. And I guess Lindsay took it like a champ, but I couldn't have been thrilled. However, as 1978 pressed on, the love affair took an on-again, off-again dynamic, and the romantic adrenaline started to wane. As more and more people found out, the tension within this band increased, and some people in Mac's inner circle were deeply hurt, none more than Jenny Boyd. Ultimately, the affair was short-lived because of just how damaging it was. But before it all came to a close, there was still one more devastating twist in the works. As Stevie Nicks wrote material for the next album at her California house, crafting lyrics from her journals, her best friend Sara was often at her side. The two women adored each other and often sang and played music together. Sara's marriage to Fleetwood Mac friend Jim Ricor had passed the point of no return, though, and Stevie's home had become a much-needed sanctuary for her. But just as things were slowing down with Stevie and Mick, things were speeding up between Mick and Sara Ricor. And in November of '78, Stevie received a call from Jim. Sara moved in with Mick this morning, and I thought you might want to know. This was a huge blow. Stevie lost Mick and her best friend on the same day. Said Stevie Nicks, "That whole thing was a nightmare. I went up and sat on a mountain for 3 hours and watched my life pass before me. Then I had to get up the next day, get dressed, and go into work and not ever look at Mick for months. It was horrible, horrible. Months of sitting in that room 5 days a week, all day long, and all night sometimes." That was 3 months into the 13-month marathon of the making of Tusk. Can you imagine? Working side by side with two of your exes for almost a year? The studio atmosphere was deadly. No one in the Mac circle approved of Mick stealing their friend Jim Ricor's wife. Not that they were happy about Mick and Stevie either, but Sara got the brunt of the blame for the whole affair and was banished from the studio, actually. During that time, the bandmates hardly spoke to each other. And for a long time, like I said, Stevie wouldn't even look at Mick. Now, as we further break down this song, this drama, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. The glasses I wear every day on this channel. They support our mission of keeping the music alive. If kids going back to school, it's a perfect time to get glasses for the whole family, starting at only $6.95. Check it out today at Zenni.com. However, this tortured disconnect between band members, it eventually gave way to a sprawling, experimental, and ambitious 20-track double set. Dominated by Buckingham's vision, he insisted that releasing another album like Rumors would be tantamount to prostitution. Rather, Tusk was to blend the classic Fleetwood Mac soft rock sound with the emerging influences of punk and new wave. In fact, Lindsay was taken by the spirit of punk. As he looked back at what Fleetwood Mac had accomplished, he saw the work of arrogant, indulgent dinosaurs. For me, said Buckingham, being sort of the culprit behind that particular album, it was done in a way to undermine the formula of doing Rumors 2 and Rumors 3, which is kind of the business model that Warner Brothers would have liked us to follow. End of quote. However, Lindsay's artistic integrity would be lost on a worldwide audience clearly enamored with Rumors even still. And at the time of Tusk's release, Fleetwood Mac lost a step. They came in at number 4 in the US instead of number 1 like the two predecessors. The record did produce 2 hot singles, number 8, Tusk, and number 7, Sara. But the album's 5 other singles made less of an impact. Think About Me, it did go to number 20, but Sisters of the Moon, it only reached number 86.
Think about me. Sister of the moon.
And Not That Funny and Angel filled the chart altogether. Great songs, but didn't work.
It's not that funny, is it?
For a 20-track double album, expectations must have been much higher. Regardless, Tusk has done well in the long run, claiming double platinum status in the US. I mean, it's nowhere near the caliber of Rumors, but definitely a smash hit by most other band standards.
I think I had missed my match.
Arguably the most memorable and impactful track to come off Tusk was Sara, a trademark Stevie Nicks song if there ever was one. One of her most personal, it's actually my personal favorite Fleetwood Mac song that they ever recorded. Now, despite the turmoil that it spawned, or maybe because of it, Sara really is the ultimate Fleetwood Mac song of the late 70s. Breathless, ethereal, contemplative. It just has so many layers to it. Even just the name Sara itself is jam-packed with a diversity of meaning. It was a name that, Stevie loved to sing because it was special to her. As she says in the lyrics, Sara was the poet in her heart.
You're the poet in my heart.
And in a very real sense, the name represented her alter ego. She was a muse or a musical spirit. And in fact, Stevie would even take the name as a pseudonym in 1986. When she entered the Betty Ford Center for Cocaine Treatment. Tango and the Night's Welcome to the Room, Sara, that was inspired by her rehab stint.
Well, I will be different when I get back.
But the layers, they don't end there. Sara was, of course, also the name of her one-time best friend, Sarah Core, who sat by her side by side as she composed the demo for this very song. Sara would understandably believe that she was the song's primary inspiration, but Stevie would rebuff the idea, later saying, Sara likes to think it's completely about her, but it's really not. It's about me, it's about her, it's about Mick, it's about Fleetwood Mac. In fact, the song is about so many different people and circumstances that the original demo was more like a saga than a pop song. Clocking in at over 15 minutes long, the storyline spans 16 verses, which would unfortunately be too long for even a double record.
They say it doesn't matter anymore.
Taking an axe to it was very painful, but Stevie got Sara down to 14 minutes, and then 11, then 9, and 7, and finally got it to a runtime of about 4 minutes and 40 seconds for the radio version. I was at the point where I went to the word Sara, is that even going to be left in the song? Now, the initial long play track referenced everyone in the band, their extended family life, romantic relationships, broken friendships, and personal tragedies. Now, Mick in his autobiography commented on this, saying, Stevie's original version was much longer, nearly 16 minutes, and told more of the story. It's for Stevie to unmask the meanings and intentions behind all the lyrics, but I do know that the Great Dark Wing mentioned in the song is a reference to me. That is what she and Sara thought that my black Ferrari sounded like when it came up the drive to Stevie's house. End of quote.
A great dark wing.
Extended versions have since shown up on Fleetwood Mac's 1988 Greatest Hits album, the expanded edition of Tusk, and of course YouTube. Together, these all give a clearer picture of Nick's original storyline. Writing Sara, it was clearly a healing process for Stevie Nicks, though it had been started before Sara and Mick got together. It was completed after the fact, and a feeling of wallowing in her misfortune is clearly present in the evocative line, drowning in the sea of love where everyone would love to drown.
In the sea of love.
Poetry, such a great line. Years after the fact, Stevie described this lyric as self-indulgent. She said, don't we all love to lay face down on our bed and go, I'm so miserable, don't bug me, I want to hurt. She also said that even though she hated the suffering and the pain, it was worth it. That same suffering drove her to her typewriter to write it all down in the song. There's a lot more incredible imagery and true poetry throughout this song, and it all starts with that magical opening verse, "Wait a minute, baby." I mean, that just grabs me every time. Stevie's voice, it's so entrancing.
Wait a minute, baby.
Stay with me a while, said you'd give me light, but you never told me about the fire.
But you never told me about the fire.
Not only is that representative of what Stevie had just gone through with Mick, but it's something that we can all relate to. The innocence, the optimism, the excitement of new relationships giving way to tragic ending and getting burned in the end. I mean, who hasn't been there?
But now it's gone.
And there's plenty more where that came from. I mean, the sheer amount of personal insight and raw emotion already make this one of the deepest songs in Fleetwood Mac's catalog. And it's a deep catalog. But it doesn't end there. I mean, there's actually another storyline that feeds into Sara as well. At some point in '77, Stevie Nicks became pregnant with Don Henley's baby. This was before her affair with Mick and after her breakup with Lindsay. Still with me? The pair connected in July of '76 when Fleetwood Mac opened a series of concerts for the massively popular Eagles.
One of these crazy old nights.
I mean, two of the biggest bands of the '70s together on tour. Can't even imagine it. When Henley and Nicks crossed paths on that tour, they realized that they actually had a lot in common. And it wasn't long before they started seeing each other. And for the next year, Nicks and Henley were a sort of secret Hollywood rock and roll couple. And at first, Don treated Stevie like a queen. There were flowers, there were presents, attentive phone calls, even a private plane to fly her out to be with. Now, when Stevie told Don Henley about the baby, she said she thought it was a girl named Sara. Though at first somewhat enthusiastic about the idea, Don Henley later lost interest in Stevie, and she ended up aborting the child. When Eagles went back on tour, Stevie didn't see Don for a while after that. When questioned about the song years later, Henley said, "I believe to the best of my knowledge, Stevie became pregnant by me, and she named the unborn kid Sara. And she had an abortion and then wrote the song of the same name to the spirit of the aborted baby." Stevie later elaborated in an interview with Billboard. She said, "Had I married Don and had that baby, had she been a girl, I would have named her." As Mick Fleetwood pointed out earlier, Stevie is the one who knows the full meaning of her song, but maybe when she sings, "Now it's gone, it doesn't matter what for,"
No, it doesn't matter anymore.
and there's a heartbeat and it never really died. Maybe that has something to do with the girl named Sara that she never had. There was also, "When you build your house, call me home." That was referring to Don Henley as well, from what I understand.
Then please call me home.
There are many who have misheard the lyric "said Sara" as "dead Sara," believing that she is referencing, the aborted baby. In fact, the band Dead Sara misheard it and named their band after that line, citing Stevie Nicks as their biggest influence. There's just so much to this song, it's impossible to cover it all here. But let's just say, born out of multiple tragedies and heartaches, Sara is an absolute Fleetwood Mac classic. After its release, Sara went to number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100. It got close to number 1. Also went to number 13 on the US Adult Contemporary chart. It went to 37 in the UK, 31 in France, 18 in South Africa, number 14 in Belgium and the Netherlands, to number 12 in Canada and New Zealand, and it also went to number 11 in Australia. After an extended courtship, Mick Fleetwood and Sara Rakor eventually married in 1988, and they divorced in 95. Sometime after that, looking back on his turbulent affair with Stevie, Mick couldn't help but wonder what might have been. If only the timing had been just a bit different. Maybe they could have made it work, said Mick. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Stevie and I had agreed to make a go of it. We got distracted, and I was still hemming and hawing with Jenny, so it just never happened. And there was a moment when it could have. He went on to say that he still remembers that at the time he wanted their relationship to be more than their circumstances would allow. He wanted it to work so badly. but it just would have been utter madness. And honestly, it already was. Had they continued, Fleetwood Mac could have very well broken up. From bandmates to significant others to everyone else, I think it would have been more than any of them could have handled. Even so, Mick said, I assure you that there was a time when all of it seemed worth the suffering to me. We all feel that way sometimes. Stevie, for her part, later called Mick one of her great, great loves. Sometimes I guess it is the greatest tragedies that make for the most compelling and meaningful art. And Sara is one of those songs that fits the bill. It just draws you in with its melancholy beauty and holds you there until you're completely enveloped in this pain, this anguish, sadness. I dare say hope. This song has haunted me for decades. It got me through many nights of pain and just utter anguish as a younger man when a girl I loved dearly was taken from me tragically. One day she was there, the next day gone. It just took many years to work through the hurt, and this song was my companion. It was the poet of my heart. Leave us a comment about Fleetwood Mac and Sara. What are your memories of the song? What do you think the lyrics mean? Let us know below. Let's have a good discussion. I just love this song so much. What do you love about it? Share what you feel about its sonic quality. If you want to see more about Fleetwood Mac, we have several other songs we've covered. I'll link to them below. Make sure that you subscribe below so that you never miss out on our videos. Check us out on Patreon. All of this is about keeping the music alive. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth.